It's Patrick Hutzel from IntensiveCareHotline.com, where we instantly improve the lives for families of critically ill patients in intensive care so that you can make informed decisions, have peace of mind, real power, real control, and so that you can influence decision making fast, even if you're not a doctor or a nurse in intensive care. This is another episode of Your Questions Answered, and in last week's episode I answered another question from one of our readers, and the question last week was, my dad is in ICU and still vulnerable, but why is the ICU team rushing my dad to be transferred to the ward? You can check out last week's question by clicking on the link below this video. In today's episode of Your Questions Answered, I want to answer the next question from one of my clients, Anna, as part of my one-on-one consulting and advocacy service. Anna is bothered if her dad's speech and swallowing problems are stroke related, and she's asking if she should request for her dad's medical records to be reviewed to find out the cause of the issue. So Anna's question today is, my dad is already out of ICU but still with swallowing and speech problems. Should I request for a review of his medical records to find out the cause? So the following consulting and advocacy session are excerpts from a one-on-one email consulting and advocacy with myself, and I'm going to read out those emails. Hi Anna, please see my comments to your questions below. I'm very happy to get on the phone with you when you're free. Hi Patrick, thank you so much for your email. Very kind of you to ask. I've been meaning to purchase another email consulting session. There's so much to update you on, and I really need your advice and expertise on some of the issues. Very quickly, on the plus side, Dad is still off all oxygen. His breathing is fine. All the anxiety is gone, which just proves his anxiety was founded, as he was genuinely finding it difficult to breathe before getting the right treatment. I feel it makes it all the more remarkable he actually weaned from the ventilator in ICU, as he wasn't getting any steroid treatment, as they hadn't called in the respiratory consultant for a second opinion. Yes, Anna, I presume he's still on the steroids for inflammation like you previously mentioned. I remember as soon as he was commenced on the steroids, his oxygen levels came down and he felt at ease with his breathing, which still seems the case. I am finding across the board in the UK, in ICU, that specialist consultations are the exception and not the rule, much to the detriment of patients in ICU from my experience. Anna says, well, Dad is now looking well. He's in a single room on the respiratory ward. He's very happy as it's quieter and gives him private space to have visitors. He's sleeping much better. Anna, privacy is very important in a hospital, and so is a good night's sleep, especially after what your dad has been through. Are they showering him? A shower, I believe, works wonders after such a long critical illness. From Anna, he has a lovely physio, Ray, who is wonderful, so can-do attitude and motivated. He loves Dad's PMA and his resilience. Dad managed to walk along the corridor with a walking frame. He wants Dad to start going off the ward in a wheelchair for a change of scenery with us, playing Scrabble, doing Sudoku, that kind of thing. That's great, Anna. You and your family have shown your dad the can-do attitude by not giving up and by fighting for what he needs. The more staff he has around him with the same mental attitude, the better. Just like Christian described in his interview that he had a fantastic physio team around him, the same is important for your dad. One thing standing out for me in all of this is simply how far he has come. I was surprised that in the fluoroscopy report, nobody mentioned that he survived 7 cardiac arrests. Get your dad out and about if you can. Get him some fresh air, some natural daylight. If you can play Scrabble, etc., that is mind stimulating. Now, I appreciate that you sent me a picture of the goal board, Anna, because I like the goal board and I agree he needs the oral care regularly. A better long-term goal would be to have the eating part as part of the goals. A long-term goal would also be to go home so he can keep the end goal in mind. From Anna. My dad is now reading his Kindle. He actually read an entire book and enjoyed it. He openly admits his concentration level isn't back to where it was, but I know you explained to me it's very much part of the recovery after critical illness. It's funny, Dad used to love television, but actually says he's really not bothered about watching it much at the moment. You're right that after critical illness some things can change a little, and I guess that's natural. Anna, many patients after a critical illness take a long time to recover mentally and physically. Imagine being in induced coma for a couple of months, having truckloads of addictive sedatives and opiates for the induced coma as well as other multiple drugs infused. It does come with side effects such as a prolonged recovery. And if your dad read an entire book, that's really massive progress, I think. That takes a lot of attention and concentration. From Anna. What my dad loves is company and visitors. That hasn't changed. He's always been very sociable and loves to chat. His cognitive recovery is truly remarkable. Anna, that is incredibly positive, and therefore I think it's unlikely he had a stroke. They can check in the MRI and rule it out, hopefully. From Anna. Some challenges remain, Patrick, as do some concerns on our part about care. Dad really wants to move forward with his voice and swallow. He had a second video fluoroscopy report attached below. The speech therapy feel they need neurology to lead on it now. Dad is booked for a head MRI, but his pacemaker requires a cardiologist to be present, so consequently there are only 2 lists per month. I await the date. Anna, I understand that with his permanent pacemaker he is unable to have an MRI without the specialist being present. From Anna. It sounds as though they are now considering whether his dysphagia is related to the possible TIA before his admission to hospital or a possible stroke in ICU. As you know, Patrick, this is what we were asking all along in ICU. Can they do a head MRI? What about his swallow? Now you are proposing to discharge him, but what about his neurology? Just 2 weeks ago I said, could his swallow issues be related to a possible stroke? Every time they have shut it down. Now suddenly they are thinking it's stroke related. What's happening? Anna, I guess it would be very difficult for them to determine if the swallowing issue is stroke or tracheostomy related. Especially since you mentioned that his neurology has improved, and since you mentioned that he's mentally so much stronger, I would imagine a stroke is unlikely. Again, a neurologist should be giving some input to seek clarity. If there is one thing ICU was correct all the way along, is that recovery after such a prolonged critical illness can take time and is unpredictable. Also, with 7 cardiac arrests, quote unquote, under his belt, I would expect some neurological deficits, but not a stroke. Again, the MRI should get clarity on the stroke issue. From Anna. I can't really get to the bottom of how and when speech therapy assessed him. I honestly don't know if they did before he left ICU. I asked on the respiratory ward, but they said ICU keep their own notes separately. Anna, usually all medical records should be combined. In case you haven't got access to it, you emailed me the fluoroscopy report and I have attached them again. From Anna. We have come to the conclusion it would be useful to request all of his medical records from the beginning. Dad agreed and signed the form. Do you offer a service for reviewing notes, Patrick? Yes, we do, Anna. We absolutely do that as a service of ours to review medical records. I think we need to track this back, as it's been over a month now since Dad left ICU and we're still no further forward with his swallow. He is still nil by mouth. Anna, yes, we do offer to review medical records. In fact, many of our clients request this service. We can certainly do that and go in as much detail as possible. Given that both fluoroscopies are almost identical in their findings, moderate to severe aspiration pre and post swallow with custard, mostly aspiration is silent with a delayed cough. Refer fluoroscopy results to nutrition support team. I am not surprised, therefore, that he's still nil by mouth. The risk for an aspiration pneumonia is too high, and therefore the risk for ICU readmission is way too high. From Anna. There have been problems with his feeding tube. His pH levels were off, but x-rays were appearing to show it in the right place. It turns out the feeding tube was too low. It was delivering the feed in the wrong part. Ileum, I believe. Is that possible? So they told us it was causing Dad's body to evacuate the feed too quickly. As you know, Dad has suffered with extremely loose stools since admission to ICU. They think this is what has been causing his constant diarrhea. And now that is very scary stuff. If the nasogastric tube was sitting too low, it would have delivered feeds in the duodenum or jejunum instead of his stomach, causing loose stools potentially and also causing an acidic pH. The acidic pH is also a risk for causing a stomach ulcer or even stomach bleed. Totally unnecessary and avoidable. How long did it take them to work that out? Something we could find out when reviewing the medical records. From Anna. Apparently they admitted to my stepmom they are amazed Dad has been recovering so well physically given the compromised feed situation. I didn't realize that Dad was losing weight at intervals and they didn't know why. So we're putting him on the highest calorie feeds. Anna, I think your dad has been recovering in spite of all the issues and obstacles, not because of the treatment and therapy. I think his positive mental attitude needs to be mentioned again. It's something you pointed out from the start and it looks like he keeps going because of it. One proverb that comes to my mind is, if you're going through hell, keep going. Your dad certainly keeps going and despite of all of the obstacles, he keeps slowly improving. Another sign in my mind why he doesn't have a stroke. From Anna. Does all this sound normal, acceptable to you? As non-medics, we have no idea. We don't want to complain if this is an accepted complication, but on the other hand, his bowel incontinence has been very, very distressing for Dad. It's something that has really worried him. They have always told us that as Dad can say when it's about to happen, so they think the nerve connection is there and it's the liquid feed that's the problem. Anna, having the feeding tube sitting too low is unacceptable. First, they should have x-rayed it on insertion and then do a daily position check of the nurse, and the nursing staff should be part of their standard routine and checks. A simple check by either aspirating food and checking pH or by inserting air into the stomach and do a bubble check with the stethoscope could have avoided this issue in the first place. The ward nurses should be trained on checking a nasogastric feeding tube. It's basic nursing care. In most instances, the liquid feed don't cause diarrhea or loose stools, and if it does, a dietitian needs to review and change it. Many patients with chronic diseases live with PEG or nasogastric feeds and don't have diarrhea. Keep in mind, though, the many antibiotics your dad would have had in ICU would have caused some diarrhea at some point. In all of this, is a dietitian or a gastroenterologist involved? Speech therapy suggested in their fluoroscopy reports to refer to nutrition supports team. Has this happened? If so, what are their recommendations? From Anna. They have put a new tube in now, but Dad is going to have a PEG feed procedure on the 17th of September, as they anticipate his swallow therapy will be a long process. Plus, he can't leave hospital to go to the residential rehab unit with a nasogastric tube, can he? Anna, personally, I am anti-PEG tube for a number of reasons. It would be a more permanent tube, but I also understand that going to a rehab with a nasogastric tube has the risk that if it comes out, they can't replace it there because they won't have the skills. And then your dad would have to go back to hospital, and you certainly don't want that. Because your dad hasn't really progressed in terms of swallowing, a PEG might help him to go to rehab and secure the placement there. In this particular instance, it's a matter of weighing up options. I always believe that a PEG tube makes people lazy to even try and do the swallowing tests, etc., because the nutrition is taken care of. Given that your dad has started to walk with a walker, it might be timely to go to rehab with a PEG, as long as there's a plan in place to get your dad eating again, i.e. go to rehab and have private speech therapy. From Anna. ENT examined Dad last week and reported his vocal cords have bowed. I don't know what this means for recovery of his voice, which is still a whisper. Anna, ENT should have an opinion if swallowing issues and aspiration is stroke related, or still a weakness from his prolonged and complicated ICU stay. I would ask them if I was you. The vocal cords might be damaged from the long period of breathing tube and then tracheostomy. Again, it all comes down to speech therapy and swallowing therapy as well as ENT assessment. From Anna. I have started taking photos of his care plan and nursing notes. Would it be easier to send all images to you via WhatsApp, as I don't know which are relevant and which aren't, if you see what I mean? Anna, you can send them via WhatsApp, email, Skype, or you could just upload them in a Google Drive or Dropbox document. Let me know if you're not familiar with Google Drive or Dropbox, and I can share with you how to do it. From Anna. The SALT input isn't ideal as they lack resources. They said Dad needs speech therapy every day, but that they simply don't have the resources. I wonder if we should buy in private speech therapy. They also said he needs hourly oral care, which happened in ICU but isn't happening right now. I agree, Anna, that he needs speech and swallowing therapy daily. I would make inquiries with private speech therapy in your situation. What's probably more important is to find a speech therapist who has experience with ventilator and tracheostomy weaning and the complications and implications associated with it. Even though speech therapy might not have the resources, they may also lack the experience due to your dad's case being really complex. Keep in mind, not many patients in ICU need long-term ventilation with tracheostomy. The ones who do need very specialized care and attention, ranging from medical to nursing, physiotherapy, dietitian, and speech therapist. From Anna. Absolutely, I'm still very happy to do the interview, Patrick. I could potentially arrange childcare. Anna, next week would be fine, no problem there. Let me know which day suits and I can work around you. From Anna, I hope I've covered everything. I'll purchase another consulting session with you. Thank you so much. From Anna. So that's the end of today's one-on-one consulting and advocacy session with me and Anna. It continues in next week's Your Questions Answered episode. So, how can you become the best advocate for your critically ill loved one? How can you make informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power, and influence quickly whilst your loved one is critically ill in intensive care? You will get to that all-important feeling of making informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power, and influence when you download your free Instant Impact Report now by entering your email below. In your free Instant Impact Report, you will learn quickly how to make informed decisions, get peace of mind, real power and real control, and how you can influence decision-making fast whilst your loved one is critically ill in intensive care. Your free Instant Impact Report gives you in-depth insight that you must know whilst your loved one is critically ill or is even dying in intensive care. Sign up and download your free Instant Impact Report now by entering your email below. In your free Instant Impact Report, you will learn how to speak the secret intensive care language so that the doctors and the nurses know straight away that you are an insider and that you know and understand what's really happening in intensive care. In your free report, you will also discover how to ask the doctors and the nurses the right questions, discover the many competing interests in intensive care and how your critically ill loved one's treatment may depend on those competing interests. How to eliminate fear, frustration, stress, struggle, and vulnerability even if your loved one is dying. You will get 5 mind-blowing tips and strategies helping you to get on the right path to making informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power, and influence in your situation. You will get real-world examples that you can easily adapt to your critically ill loved one's situation. How to stop being intimidated by the intensive care team and how you will be seen as equals. You will get crucial behind-the-scenes insight so that you know and understand what's really happening in intensive care and how you need to manage doctors and nurses in intensive care, and it's not what you think. Thank you for tuning into this week's Your Questions Answered episode, and I'll see you again next week in another update. Make sure you also have a look at our blog section for more tips and strategies, or simply send me an email to support@intensivecarehotline.com with your questions. Also, have a look at our membership site, intensivecaresupport.org, for families of critically ill patients in intensive care. You can also call me, find phone numbers on the top of the website. Also, have a look at our ebook section, and you can get one-on-one consulting and advocacy with me over the phone via Skype and via email by clicking on the relevant tabs on the top of the website. This is Patrick Hutzel from intensivecarehotline.com, and I'll talk to you in a few days.